Good morning, 5th grade. We're going to continue reading in Hatchet. First, we're going to refresh our memory from Chapter 1 with this fill-in-the-blank paragraph. Let's see. Brian is traveling in a plane to Canada to see his father for the summer. Brian is depressed during the flight because he's thinking about his parents' divorce. A secret is bothering Brian because he knows something about his mom that his dad does not. The pilot even lets Brian fly the plane. Suddenly, the pilot has a heart attack and dies. Brian is left in the plane alone. If he does not fly the plane by himself, he will die. Our focus question for today is, what do a character's actions reveal about his character? A better way of saying that is reveal about him as a person. That way we don't have character twice in our sentence. Our vocabulary words are cowling. That's the removable cover of a vehicle or aircraft engine. This man is holding the cowling. The next one is transmitter. A set of equipment used to generate or carry messages or signals, especially radio or television. This device is the transmitter. Depress means to push something down. This little cartoon man is pushing this button down. And then throttle. That's the device used to control the fuel and power the engine. This red button is the throttle. All right, we're going to read Chapter 2, and we want to use our CSPS strategy. Get ready to underline information about the character setting, problem, and solution. Chapter 2. For a time, he could not understand. Brian could do nothing. Even after his mind began working and he could see what had happened, he could do nothing. It was as if his arms and legs were lead. Then he looked for ways for it not to have happened. Be asleep, his mind screamed at the pilot. Just be asleep, and your eyes will open out, and your hands will take the controls, and your feet will move to the pedals. But it did not happen. The pilot did not move except that his head rolled on a neck and possibly loose as the plane hit a small bit of turbulence. The plane. Somehow the plane was still flying. Seconds had passed, nearly a minute, and the plane flew on as if nothing had happened, and he had to do something, but did not know what. Help. He had to help. All right, we'll stop right there. So we know, let's do our setting first. Brian is on an airplane headed to Canada to see his father for the summer. All right, and you can use this quote that says, somehow the plane was still flying. Press pause to write down your answer and play when you're ready for the character. And we know that Brian is, he's in shock. We know he's in shock because he says that, he could do nothing and it was as if his arms and legs are lead. And Brian's in shock because the pilot has died and he has to figure out what to do next or he's also going to die. Press pause to write down your answer in box 1 and we can look for a quote. It says, it says he had to help. And then it also says the plane flew on as if nothing had happened and he had to do something, but he did not know what. All right, we're going to keep reading to figure out this problem. We probably, I'm thinking his problem is that he doesn't know how to fly the plane, but let's keep reading to figure out if there's like a bigger problem or if the problem develops more. He stretched one hand toward the pilot, saw that his fingers were trembling, and touched the pilot on the chest. He did not know what to do. He knew there were procedures that you could do mouth-to-mouth on victims of heart attacks and push their chests, CPR, but he didn't know how to do it, and in any case could not do it with the pilot who was sitting up in the seat and still strapped in with his seatbelt. So he touched the pilot with the tips of his fingers, touched him on the chest, and could feel nothing, no heartbeat, no rise and fall of breathing, which meant that the pilot was most certainly dead. "Please," said Brian, but did not know what or who to ask. "Please." The plane lurched again, hit more turbulence, and Brian felt the nose drop. It did not dive, but the nose went down slightly at a down angle, increased the speed, and he knew that at this angle, this slight angle down, he would ultimately fly into the trees. He could see them ahead on the horizon, where before he could see only sky. He had to fly it somehow, had to fly the plane. He had to help himself. The pilot was gone beyond anything he could do. He had to try and fly the plane. This is an important part because it reveals the external conflict, which is that Brian is trapped in the plane and the pilot is dead. And it reveals this internal conflict of Brian not knowing what to do. Brian doesn't know. He doesn't know what to do because he doesn't know how to fly a plane, and he's trying to figure out how he's going to get out of this situation. And so when it asks what challenging situation Brian is dealing with, we could say, because the pilot has died, Brian is going to have to fly the plane even though he doesn't know how. Press pause to write down your answer, and you can also write down this quote for 3B. He had to try and fly the plane. All right, we're going to keep reading. If you're not finished writing, press pause and then play for the solution. He turned back in the seat facing the front and put his hands, still trembling, on the control wheel, his feet gently on the rudder pedals. You pulled back on the stick to raise the plane. He knew that from reading. You always pull back on the wheel. He gave it a tug, and it slid back toward him easily, too easily. The plane, with the increased speed from the tilt down, swooped eagerly up and drove Brian's stomach down. He pushed the wheel back in, went too far this time, and the plane's nose went below the horizon, and the engine's speed increased in a shallow dive. Too much. He pulled back again, more gently this time, and the nose floated up again, too far, but not as violently as before, but then down a bit too much, and up again as before, and then down a bit too much, and then up very easily, and the front of the engine cowling settled. Then had it aimed at the horizon, and it seemed to be steady, and he held the wheel where it was, let out his breath, which he had been holding all this time, and tried to think what to do next. So when we're thinking about how Brian solves this problem, in those last two paragraphs, it talks about how Brian is pulling the wheel in and out to try to steady the plane and fly evenly. And he knows how to do this because he says he's read some books about how to fly planes, and so he knew that you pulled the wheel in and out to get the plane, to figure out how to fly the plane evenly. All right, so for 4A, we could say, Brian remembered from his reading to pull back and forth on the plane wheel in order to get it flying steady. Press pause to write down your answer and play when you're ready for a quote. And you can say this quote right here, that he had it aimed at the horizon and was flying steady. All right, and you have plenty of time to write your paragraph based on what you read in the, this should say second, based on what you read in the second chapter. Describe Brian's internal conflict. How does Brian deal with the conflict? All right.